The other major thing that we get with this update is to do with QuickTime for Windows. Now, there was a lot of fuss a couple of months ago in about April about the American government saying, oh, you should take QuickTime for Windows off your computer. It might leave you open to being hacked. I think possibly it was blown up out of all proportion. Well, what Grass Valley did was they produced an update which could at least install without QuickTime, but it actually relied on QuickTime for a lot of things. What this update does is it adds in some things so it doesn't rely on QuickTime nearly as much as it used to. So it used to rely on QuickTime for importing all QuickTime formats and exporting all QuickTime formats. If you took QuickTime off, then you probably couldn't bring in a QuickTime file at all, and also it affected a lot of still images, so JPEGs and lots of different types of images actually were coming in through QuickTime, and if you took QuickTime off, you couldn't import them at all. What this update does is solve most of the importing formats. If I haven't got QuickTime installed on the system, and there is no QuickTime on this system, then I can bring in a bunch of JPEGs or a bunch of bitmaps or whatever, which with previous versions, if you took off QuickTime, they wouldn't work at all. It's now most image formats, so if you go to the list, you'll see here I've got TIFFs and TARGAs and SGI files and JPEGs and all sorts. It also loads up lots of different types of QuickTime files. It's not all types of QuickTime files, but for example, here is a file which is an Avid DNxHR file, which is a QuickTime MOV, and that's loading up quite happily with no QuickTime installed. If I go off and find some ProRes, so here we are, a bunch of different ProRes shots all done with a Blackmagic camera, all quite happily loading up without QuickTime. So with this update, they've basically sorted out most of the importing formats. Now I'm told that some still don't work, so the QuickTime animation format doesn't work, Soresen doesn't work, and some of the 3G formats don't work, but most do. When it comes to exporting, that's a bit more limited. So if I go up to File and then Export, print to File, you'll notice if I come down to the QuickTime heading here, I've actually only got the option of Grass Valley HQ or HQX. So without QuickTime installed, you can only export HQ and HQX files. You can't export any other type of QuickTime. Of course, you can do all the other formats, all the different MXFs and AVIs and all that kind of stuff. It's just you can't export any Avid files or anything like that. Now, you might need QuickTime for something else. Avid and TMPEG and lots of other programs like that, which I also use, they really need QuickTime. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinstall QuickTime. So let's just get out of EDIUS, find my installer. This is the one that I just went to the Apple site and downloaded the latest installer, which is 7.79. Double click on it. You go to install QuickTime. Now, what I would suggest if you are putting QuickTime on a system these days, A, use the latest one, and then B, go to custom and untick QuickTime player and these bits down here. The actual security problems come with playing certain video files that have got stuff embedded in them. So for a start, if you don't put in all these QuickTime web things, which let you play QuickTime files in web browsers, then there's no vulnerability if you're on the web and you're playing a clip. If you don't put in the QuickTime player, then you can't play QuickTime files in the QuickTime player. And again, that means you're not open to any vulnerabilities. Most people say this is the best way to proceed with every single program. Just bung QuickTime in, but just don't put these in. Just put in QuickTime Essentials. Then you're very, very unlikely to have any problems anyway. Let it do its job. Now, if I go back into EDIUS, QuickTime's actually on there, but EDIUS still will not be using QuickTime for importing stuff. Now, there is an option to make it do it, but it's off as a default, which is nice. If I go up to Settings, and then System Settings, and then here under Importer Exporter, let's go to QuickTime. You can see there's a little tick box there that says Enable QuickTime Importer, and as it says, you need to restart EDIUS. If you tick that, it now uses Apple QuickTime to import QuickTime files, which means you will be able to import things like the QuickTime animation codec files, which EDIUS still can't do natively. If that's not ticked, then even if QuickTime's installed, it's still not using it for importing files. Because you could easily be in a situation where you do leave QuickTime on there, but you don't want EDIUS to use it because it can live without it. So they've put in a nice little tick box so you don't have to use it. What I do get by installing QuickTime though is if you go to File and Export and Print to File, and I go down to the QuickTime Exporter, I suddenly get all my other QuickTime formats back. I've got a QuickTime Exporter thing here, and if I go to Export and then Settings, you can get to all the stuff that we had in previous versions of EDIUS. So you have the option for Avid DNx HD MOV files, and you have the option for animation or whatever. So by putting QuickTime on there, you can still use the QuickTime exporter. And you shouldn't have any possible security problems with the exporter, because the problem is somebody gives you a dodgy QuickTime file and you play that dodgy QuickTime file, it puts some vulnerabilities into your computer. If you are exporting to QuickTime files, you're not putting any vulnerabilities on there because they won't be in the files in the first place. So it's nice that they've acted quickly and they've got it out quickly. They're going to improve it a little bit more. Probably in a couple of months' time, we'll be able to export QuickTime files without using QuickTime as well. Other thing worth mentioning, with this update, EDIUS now uses the current drivers for Intel graphics cards. If you're using QuickSync on a system, that means you can quite happily let Windows 10 update the drivers and your QuickSync will carry on working. Yay! Previously, we've had to make sure a specific set of drivers go in there and that it stays at those and doesn't automatically update. Well, now it's updated and using the latest ones. Of course, no doubt there'll be more ones in a couple of months' time and they'll have to update it again. It's just a nice little update so that now you can use the later Intel drivers. But that's really a quick summary of all the stuff that's in the 8.22 update for EDIUS. We have been doing a bit of testing with it. We've had no real problems with it at all. Frankly, we really like the option to put in our own LUTs. So I hope you found that interesting. If you want any more information about EDIUS or any of our tutorials, just visit the website www.dvc.uk.com. Go to our Facebook page where we're always posting updates of the latest news of what's going on in the video world, and also sometimes problems that we're having. During the month of August, we've got a special offer on all of our editing systems with 10% off of all of our desktops and 5% off our best laptops. So if you're interested in getting a dedicated system set up by somebody that knows what they're doing, pop off to the website, have a look at those, and then give us a ring or an email and we can discuss what your requirements are and make you a custom built system. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel for more videos.